Get ready for an electrifying night of classical music as the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra presents Schumann in Spring. Guest pianist Ying Li brings power and elegance to Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor. The night closes with Beethoven's Symphony No. 4, often dubbed the cheerful sibling to his more dramatic symphonies. Join the WCO on Friday, April 17th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at wcoconcerts.org/spring. Earth Day is coming up, so there's no better time to shop at St. Vinny's for quality clothing, furniture, and home goods. April is Earth Month, and thrifting is both cheaper and eco-friendly. Good for the planet, good for your wallet. Plus, when you shop at St. Vinny's, you support local. All dollars spent at St. Vinny's stays in Dane County. Proceeds go to local food pantries, pharmacies, microloans, housing support, and more. Follow at Vinny's Dane County on Facebook and Instagram to be notified about special events coming up or to see the latest finds in store. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, what do we actually know about the traffic accident trends in Madison? Last week, a school bus was hit by a truck and 5 kids were hurt. This is the latest in a handful of crashes to make headlines in 2026. One group of UW-Madison researchers are tracking accidents across the state, the Traffic Operations and Safety Laboratory. Joining me today is Traffic Safety Engineer Research Program Manager Andrea Bill. Andy, welcome to CityCast Madison.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, well, let's get straight into it. Has the Madison area had more fatal crashes in 2026 than typical?
So right now we're still a little bit down. As we go through the year, we'll be able to see. But actually, City of Madison has been doing a really good job in terms of their Vision Zero and reducing their crashes on their roadways.
And I know that you all partner with the City of Madison and their Vision Zero work. Can you talk a little bit about that partnership and what Vision Zero is for folks who don't know?
Yeah, so Vision Zero is a nationwide effort to bring awareness that any fatalities or injuries are unacceptable on our roadways, that we need to be taking better care of our family and friends to make sure that they get home safe and sound every day. The important thing about Vision Zero is that it is an actionable plan that looks at implementing solutions to make this a sustained decline in our fatalities and injuries on our roadway.
Yeah, so just in this moment, it feels like, oh my God, there are so many accidents happening. Is there a disconnect between the trends that we're seeing and how safe we feel? I'm thinking about some of the fatal accidents we've seen this year, and it just feels like it's happening at an alarming rate. But like you said, the trends are down.
The trends are down, but I think that hopefully, because of Vision Zero and the discussions that we're having within the city, that it is bringing people more awareness to it. And so we're talking about it more, like having me on this podcast today and being able to discuss it, I think is the important component to it. I think that over the years, we've gotten kind of immune to this fact of, traffic crashes just happen on our roadways and there's nothing we can do about them. They're accidents, not crashes, right? And so I think what we're seeing now is people saying, wait, this is something that our society shouldn't have, and that we should be looking at how we address these and how do we change the culture around traffic safety. I think that that's a big discussion to have. We've done it over time, right? Wisconsin used to be known for one for the road, for a beer, for our impaired driving. We still have a fair amount of impaired driving that we need to be addressing, but we're getting better to say, hey, this is unacceptable and what's going on with it. There's a whole component about speed and making sure that, I think everybody thinks of the speed limit as the minimum. And it is the actual maximum. And people just get a tendency to always just drive 5 miles an hour over, 7 miles an hour over. And that really does play a factor into reaction times and the severity of the crashes. So yeah, we are talking about them more, which I think is really good. And I think that there's a lot more that we can still do to be able to look at improving the safety on our roadways, not just for cars, but also our pedestrians and bicyclists as well.
Well, I know that we've talked about Vision Zero here on the show and talked with the City of Madison and their engineering departments and trying to understand traffic safety in Madison. I think maybe folks might be a little less familiar with y'all's work, the mission of the Traffic Operations and Safety Laboratory, or TOPS Lab, is to, quote, improve traffic operations and safety in Wisconsin and across the Midwest through a diverse balance of service partnerships, research, and training. Can you dive deeper in sharing what TOPS Lab does and your work?
So while we do national and international work as well, we really focus on that Wisconsin idea. We want to make sure that what we're doing here at the UW within the TOPS Lab is improving the quality of life for all of the citizens within Wisconsin. And so that involves doing a lot of work with cities such as City of Madison, City of Racine, others, Sun Prairie, to look at the safety in their areas, as well as, what are new and innovative technologies that we could be putting in place to look at our roadways, as well as doing kind of comprehensive work across the state. So working with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation to look at what are the safety benefits of putting roundabouts in versus traffic signals, or where should the barriers be placed on our interstate roadways to prevent cross-median crashes. So really thinking about, what are we seeing in terms of crashes to look at it so we're not as, maybe we're a little reactive to start with, but then looking to be more proactive in the future to say, how do we prevent those crashes from even beginning in the first place? And so we do that through a variety of different research. We have various publications that are out there, as well as doing different training and technical assistance. So one part of this is through the Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program, where we provide training, technical assistance, and tech transfer to all local agencies. So cities, towns, villages, as well as counties as well. So really making sure that we are getting the information out, whether it's research or just best practices to every level of government.
So really data-driven solutions and looking at interventions and what worked, what didn't, how we can improve and get ahead of, any fatalities.
Correct.
Naturally, one of the starting points is knowing where are crashes happening? Where are these issues? So the way that we came across your work here on CityCast Madison is through the Traffic Safety for Wisconsin interactive maps. And those map accidents across the state and allows users to filter for specific results. And we'll put a link in the show notes for y'all listening so you can check it out for yourself. But Andy, can you explain how those maps work?
Yeah. So community maps has started way back when, where people were actually just putting pins on a map, right?
Physical pins.
Physical pins, literally physical pins. And then they would fall down. And then we moved into digital pins, where we had a Google map and people would go in and place some marking down with that. Back in 2017, we said, okay, let's move to this being more accessible and more timely, and then also as well as consistency. So we actually are getting direct feeds from the law enforcement crash database or crash records. So if a crash was submitted yesterday to the state, it'll be on our system through Community Maps today. So while it's still in draft form, it's still preliminary, it really gives us an idea in a timely manner where crashes are happening, what are the factors associated with them, and then what we can do with it. Through Community Maps, and I appreciate you guys putting the link in your show notes on this one, it's showing you some information about your jurisdiction. You can do different fields that go along with kind of the umbrella strategic highway safety plan for the state. As well as then there's other information in there. So there's dashboards that you can compare, this year versus last year on different types of the different driver behaviors, different trends associated with it. So we tried to make it a one-stop shopping for traffic safety data and information that goes along with it, because really it is not going to be necessarily the federal government or the state government pushing down and improving that traffic safety culture. It's going to be us in our individual communities talking about our spheres of influence to make sure that we are letting our family and friends know the risks of driving impaired or driving too fast on our roadways, to really make that change with regards to traffic safety. I get really excited talking about data. Sorry, Bianca.
Yeah, that's why we have you here.
Within Community Maps, we started with crash data. And then we realized that crash data doesn't tell the whole story. So in Wisconsin, a reportable crash for a motor vehicle has to involve a motor vehicle in transit. So thinking about our ATVs on our roadways, we have a lot of ATVs now on our roadways. They run off the road and they hit a traffic sign or things of that sort. That's not reported through the traditional crash database. That's reported to the Department of Natural Resources. So over the years, we've been building up relationships to say, okay, let's get that data in. So we start to tell a more complete story of what's happening on the systems of our roadways. And we're also looking at adding in citations and warnings, as well as place of last drink or some of the liquor establishments. So again, we start to are kind of combining the data together to get a better holistic view of what's happening on the safety of our roadways so that we can look to make sure we do those data-driven interventions as soon as we possibly can.
Two sisters, two suitors, and a drunken wager about the nature of fidelity. What could possibly go wrong? Madison Opera presents Mozart's Così fan tutte, a delightful romantic comedy full of love, laughter, and true humanity. The opera tells a timeless tale of young people in love doing foolish things as various schemes are put into action. Flirtations in the moonlight ensue, and emotions end in a tangle revealing it all. Projected English translations will make sure you don't miss a word of this witty and wise story. And Mozart's dazzling score will fill Overture Hall with sublime arias and sparkling ensembles. You only have 2 chances to see Così fan tutte, so join Madison Opera on Friday, April 24th at 7:30 p.m. or Sunday, April 26th at 2:30 p.m. Tickets start at under $25, so get yours today at madisonopera.org. All right, it's time for our weekly segment, Banking Outside the Box with Oak Bank, with the sponsor of this episode, Oak Bank. It's your opportunity to get your banking and financial questions answered by an expert.
Hi, I'm Stephanie East, Treasury Management Officer with Oak Bank, and today's question is how do community banks support the local community as opposed to a large chain bank that's headquartered far away? Community banks invest client deposits right back into your local community. The money dispersed throughout our community supports families, businesses, and pertinent needs for everyone. At Oak Bank, the sense of community isn't just a nice bonus or just some theme that we operate or something we put in a mission statement. It really is how we operate and what we strive to do. Every year we have an annual pumpkin giveaway in the fall, and that is such a well-attended community event that everyone in the community looks forward to and also benefits one of our nonprofit partners for money raised during the event. That just shows that your money gets put to work at Oak Bank. We support Dane County causes and individuals. Our founder, Bob Gorsuch, likes to say that when he drives through a town, he can tell how well their local bank is run. If there's nice parks and libraries and thriving small businesses up and down Main Street, he knows there's a good community bank in town. And Fitchburg is certainly evidence of that. If community support is important to you, reach out to us at Oak Bank.
Huge thanks to Oak Bank for sponsoring this segment. If you've got a banking or financial question, hit the link in the show notes. You might even hear it answered in an upcoming episode. I'm thinking about ATVs. I'm thinking that's probably happening more, certainly once you get a little bit more rural and get out to the suburbs and what have you. And then you mentioned adding more data around drinking establishments and places where folks are drinking alcohol. Are there any Madison area, Dane County specific additions that you guys are looking at or have integrated that add more information outside of just the traffic that you're describing?
Yeah, so one thing that we're looking at that we haven't fully figured out yet, but we're working on solutions to it, is looking at e-bike crashes. So a bicycle crash hitting a pedestrian or a bicycle crash hitting like a curb in an urban environment isn't going to be in our traditional data sets. And e-bikes are a little bit different animal, right? They can go a lot faster. With that speed comes that kinetic energy, which makes crashes more severe with it. And so we're trying to get a better understanding of what's going on with that. And so we've been looking at gathering different data sets, such as maybe from ambulance run data, or looking at it largely from like an ER perspective to say, okay, what is the scope of the problem? And then we can kind of figure out what else we need to do. E-bikes and e-motos have very different definitions. We're still trying to figure out where they work in terms of ordinances and things of that sort. So we need the data to be able to help guide us a little bit more on that. And so we're looking at that. And a lot of this happens from talking to folks to say, what are your safety problems that you're seeing in your areas? And then going ahead to then talking with them to say, okay, where do we need to look at for that data? Because it is a little bit different as we move forward.
Well, let's talk about traffic accidents. What trends are you seeing in Dane County around traffic accidents?
Yeah, so when we look at just comparing 2025 to 2024 in Dane County, we are seeing reductions in our crashes, which is great. But when we look at those different kind of behavioral trends, we did see an increase in our older driver crashes and an increase in our distracted driving crashes. And then when we look at it by our kind of units, we did see an increase in motorcycles and then commercial motor vehicles as well. And so those help us to kind of determine where should we be looking at from an education standpoint, where do we need to be looking at from an outreach perspective. So those are helpful for us to be able to start to look at those in general. We're trying to always look at our speeds and our impairment as well on our roadways.
Something you mentioned earlier was distractibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to be a pedestrian today, to be a driver and not notice how many folks are on their phone. I imagine texting, looking for the next song. Some people just straight up watching television shows on their phone and you can see it. What are you seeing around that and data around phone usage and distractibility? What's going on in that realm?
Yeah, so at least here in Dane County, we saw a 9% increase in our distracted driving crashes in 2025 compared to 2024. And some of this might be just, getting more awareness and collecting the data that goes along with it. But I think we are definitely seeing more distraction with it. And as we think about it in an urban environment where you have pedestrians that are also distracted, right? Being around campus and see the people, the students walk and just looking at their phone and just stepping right out gives me heart palpitations because I'm like, I don't want to hit you. I can only react so fast, right? And so that's where we're definitely seeing more distraction about it. There are ways to improve that and look at it in terms of, utilizing the buckle up, put your phone down, doing the notifications on it, utilizing all of that. And again, I think it comes back to this idea that we kind of feel this false sense of security in some of our newer cars because they just operate so smoothly, right? They have that emergency braking, they have that lane assist, so it's easier for us to take our eyes off the road for a split second and then realize our car is still, doing the things it's supposed to do. And so we got to have to balance that out a little bit of how do we balance the technology and still being a safe operator of those vehicles and looking at it.
You mentioned roundabouts earlier, and it immediately piqued my interest. I'm like, I can't wait to hear about solutions. But what does the data show around traffic engineering and social projects that are working to reduce accidents?
Yeah. So what we see with roundabouts, right? There's two components of why they improve safety. They are slowing people down as they come to an intersection. If an occurrence happens, that it's not just like a T-bone crash or an angle crash like you would see at a traffic signal or a four-way stop. People are coming in and on a slight smaller angle, so not at 90 degrees, but less than that. And that reduces the severity of the crash as well, too. So we got two things that happen. We reduce the speed and we reduce the angle of the crash that improves the survivability of it. There are still confusions with it and make people a little bit uncomfortable. So you might see a more property damage only crashes, but we see a lot more reduction in our fatal and serious injuries, which is really important. So I kind of ask people when they say they don't like them, I say, well, would you rather have a tow truck or an ambulance come get you? And so kind of changing that idea of that it's important that we might still have crashes, but we need to be able to prevent those fatal and serious injury crashes. So that's done through innovative intersections such as roundabouts, or we have J-turns up in the northern part of the state. Can you describe a J-turn? Yeah. So a J-turn's on a rural roadway where you actually go ahead and you make a right turn and you go up about 300, 400 feet, and then you make a U-turn to come back. So instead of trying to shoot the gap and go all the way across those roadways that are going very fast, you're breaking the turn up into stages so that you really only have to focus on one part of the network at one time, right? So if you're making that right turn, all you got to do is look to your left to see about it. When you make that U-turn, you're looking to your right and you're looking at the oncoming traffic that's coming towards you. So you're trying to say, instead of having to process everything at that intersection at once, we're going to break it down into pieces with it.
That's so smart. Oh my goodness. There are some of these rural roads that are like, good luck to me. I cannot see. I know people are going 55 and my visibility is limited with this little hill that's happening. So I hope, because there's only so fast you can go to catch up and not.
Exactly.
That's really smart.
Yeah. So there's definitely intersection designs and things of that sort to say, how do we make sure that it's easy for drivers to understand, as well as then applying these really, kind of physics problems to it, to say we need to reduce the speed of the crashes and then try to make it easier for folks to be able to drive through it.
talking about reducing the speed, I know the city of Madison, with their work on Vision Zero, has really looked to reduce speed limits across the city. Sometimes you're seeing 20 miles per hour, or it was 25. When you look at the data, has that plan moved the needle for safety?
I think so. We're still a little early to see it for sure in all of the crash data with regards to it, but it's definitely, we know that speeds are being reduced. Are they being all the way reduced to 20 miles an hour? Not yet, but we are seeing a reduction in the speeds, and every single reduction in the speed is increasing the survivability of the crash. I talk a lot about speed is, we shouldn't talk about it as speed limit. We should talk about it as survivable speeds, because speeds are the biggest component in determining whether you're going to be able to walk away from that crash or not. And so being able to reduce those speeds on the roads where we have a lot of interaction with pedestrians and bicyclists is really a chance to increase the survivability of a crash.
What's the most surprising solution or novel solution that you guys are thinking about and kicking around?
That's a great one. So as we think about technology changes, right, there's a lot of talk about automated vehicles. And as we think about automated vehicles, yes, it's going to be further down the line a little bit, but some of those, mid-steps that we have with assisted driving systems right now, to say like adaptive cruise control or emergency braking, those technologies are really helpful. I also think that they lead people into a false sense of security, right? And so I see people that just look at the backup cameras versus looking at the side mirrors or things of that sort, right? Is making sure that we're utilizing all of the senses that we have inside the vehicles to be able to better understand what's happening around us, I think is important. So I think technology is going to definitely play a big role. We have several automated vehicles through the TOPS Lab and the CATS Lab campus there to look at, to say, how does this work in terms of identifying pavement markings on the roadway when it's winter conditions, right? So when it's all snow on the roadway, how are these systems going to be able to detect where that pavement is and what's looking at it, right? So we have some unique opportunities here in Wisconsin. That's the polite way of saying about our weather. Unique opportunities here in Wisconsin that we can look at these technologies and say, how is it going to work? And then how do we make sure that we're examining it? I think the other big component in terms of traffic safety is what else can we do to look at our land use and other alternatives to just driving, right? So what do we look at for improving the trails in our system to make sure that it's easier for our bicyclists to go from point A to point B, and our transit systems and everything else that plays a huge role in our system, that sometimes we get a little too hyper-focused on just cars, but making sure that we're looking at the whole system for improving the safety on our roadways.
And you said that earlier, talking about the e-bikes and electric bicycles. You're really illustrating why it's important to broaden the data and get the fuller picture of how we're all interacting and engaging. I hear so much from bikers about their anger about drivers in Madison and vice versa. And I think the more conversations we have around this and safety, the better.
Exactly, right? It's all we can do is talk about it. All we can do is have that interaction with our family and friends, whether you're just kind of hanging out on the Capitol and just, on the grassy areas around the terrace or at the terrace, is making sure that we're thinking about traffic safety as an integral part of how our society is working, I think is important for us, because I think we just kind of just assume it's going to happen. And then, I think all of us have been affected by a traffic crash, whether it was not just us, but maybe a family member or a high school friend that we had that had a bad mistake and they lost their life over it. We've all been affected about it, but I don't know if we always talk about it. And so really having those conversations about what is that psychological impact on all of us is important, so that we understand that we are in this all together and that we really can make a difference in our society and our system.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important conversation to talk about in terms of livability in the city of Madison. Our population is growing. There are more people coming. There are more cars coming. So these questions about how we use the roadways and our walkways, and also our land use, all of these discussions just feel more critical than ever. I know that you're a researcher and not a policymaker or traffic enforcer, but from your standpoint, what do you think are like the top 2-3 priorities you would recommend for cities like ours, like Madison, to reduce traffic accidents, especially ones that cause serious injuries or fatalities?
Yeah, so I think one is definitely looking at sustained funding to have the Vision Zero solutions be implemented more broadly. right? So we're always kind of looking to see, balancing the regular maintenance for our roadways and our traffic signals, along with making improvements to make them be what we want to be with that, to help with it. So, and that always comes with funding. So making sure that we have sustained funding for Vision Zero initiatives is really important. And that's infrastructure, as well as looking at our education and outreach, providing bike helmets to bicyclists that can't afford them. And so it's a wide variety of things that funding needs to look at to be able to examine that. It can go into transit and land use as well too on that side with it. I think the other component is having more honest dialogues about where people feeling comfortable in our system and where they're not. And so I think that's a really big listening session that just needs to happen, right? We all have our own places where we drive, walk, or bike that we're like, it gives me a little stress when I go in there, but I get through it every single time, right? And knowing about those, and even just sharing it. There may not be anything we can do at this point in time, but if I knew, Bianca, you didn't feel comfortable at this intersection and I saw you walking there, I might just slow down a little bit more, because again, I have that human connection with you to know about that intersection causes you a little bit more stress than other ones. And so again, it's making those connections, I think, is really important. So a sustained funding, changing the culture and understanding what it goes with, and understanding that it's not worth the risk of speeding to affect your life or others with regards to that. And that comes down to, again, changing the traffic safety culture, helping with enforcement and engineering and the education side of it.
And is there any way for folks who are listening who might be thinking, I want to get involved in having a safer city, I have regular discomfort in my streets, for them to be a part of the solution? Like when it comes to your lab or working with the city, how can people be a part of making our streets safer?
It definitely is. It takes the grassroots organization. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure my contact information will be in the notes for this show today. But also look up and see where your county traffic safety commissions are happening. Go ahead and attend one. Meet the folks. Understand what's going on. Going to public meetings and being a part of it. I know that City of Madison also does a lot of outreach at tables at local festivals such as Marquette and others as well too. So going and talking with folks to see how can you gather the information and have that dialogue with others as well too. The biggest thing too is talking with folks, just letting folks know about it. We can control and change the culture within our own sphere, but branch that out to your family and friends and others as well too.
Well, Andy, it's been so lovely talking with you and on this important topic and hearing about the latest data trends in our city. It's good to know that we're down at the moment, but it's always important to be mindful and hoping to get better every year, all the time. Thanks for making the effort to join us today on CityCast Madison. It means a lot.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Andrea Bill, Traffic Safety Engineer Research Program Manager at the UW TOPS Lab. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with somebody who likes to walk in these Madison streets? All right, y'all, we'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care and thanks for listening.